Welcome to Back on Track. I'm your host, Dimitrios Salazar. And before we jump into this episode today, do you hate running? Because I know that I do. So today we have a special guest with us, Jay Sandhouse, a veteran marathon runner. He's been running for 25 years, and he's going to tell us some little tips and tricks to see if we can start enjoying running like he does. So Jay Sandhouse, tell us, what was the first thing that made you decide that you wanted to lace up your shoes and run a marathon?
Well, just like you and a lot of other people, I hated running, and I tried it so many times. I was going to the gym a few days a week, and I would go on the elliptical sometimes for 2 hours, and a friend of mine at the gym said, do a race with me. No. Do a race with me. No. And they wore me down, and I did a race in 1996. It's Tamarack Turkey Trot. It was a 5K, 3.1 miles, and it was tough, but I loved it. And I was hooked after that, and I slowly stopped going to the gym, as you could probably see, and then just been running full time since then.
So, how did you end up graduating from 5Ks and going into the marathons?
Even though I was only doing 5Ks, I was still running longer distances on my own. And we were shooting a TV show in the TV studio I was working at the time, and our guest happened to be the event director for the Miami Marathon and Half Marathon. So he was telling me about the race and gave me a free entry and I did the half. And once I did the half marathon, I never looked back at these smaller races again. It was only half marathons and full marathons and one ultra marathon after that.
Well, actually, I'm glad that you brought up the ultra marathon, which leads me into my next question. What is the toughest race that you've ever done?
So this was a 50K, and it was, which is 31 miles. And it was in Brooksville, which is a little bit north of Tampa. It was through a forest. So that was my one and only opportunity. My friends got me on board and said, it's only 5 more miles. Famous last words.
So would you consider that ultra marathon to be the toughest race that you've ever done?
Oh, without a doubt, because I wasn't hydrated enough. Because we were running through a forest, and since it's not like doing a race on the road where there could be a water station every mile, there were water stations every 5 miles, and you had to check in. That's how they kept track of you. And even though there was a lot of shade, it was still in the 70s, and I underestimated that. And you know, sometimes forcing yourself to drink and stay hydrated when you're not, dying of thirst is not the easiest thing in the world. And I started cramping up real bad a few times, and I truthfully almost fainted a few times. It was brutal.
Jay, how do you prepare for marathons?
Well, as corny as it sounds, preparing for a marathon is like having a second job. So you have to do a bunch of training runs to get yourself ready, which will include at least one, if not more, 16-mile run, a 17, maybe a 20, a couple of 22-mile runs. And you have to kind of start planning, way out in advance to do it. So obviously to do 22 miles sometimes means getting up before the roosters start crowing. So you have to get up there and do that. And it's a lot of work to prepare. I've done 17 full marathons, and I'm kind of over it, because it's a lot of work. So I'm just pretty much sticking to half marathons these days.
You mentioned that running marathons is like a second job. Does that interfere with your actual work?
Well, I like to think my work interferes with the running. This is hard to comprehend unless you're a runner, but your entire life revolves around running. So basically, anything that deviates from your normal schedule, your first thought is, okay, I'm not going to be able to run tomorrow. When can I pick up the running? So I enjoy doing it. I run in the morning, instead of at night. So it's just a matter of sometimes making the sacrifice and getting up earlier than you'd like to be getting up.
That actually leads me to my next question. So you do prefer to run in the morning as opposed to the evening?
Exactly. I feel like there's no excuse to get up in the morning to run, whereas if you run at nighttime, then you can think of every excuse in the book.
So Jay, we've noticed that you've had a brace on lately. Is that because of an injury? Could you tell us a little bit about that?
It's, I had a condition, and honestly, it's been my only real injury since I've been running, knock on wood. It's called patella tracking disorder, and basically it's a situation where your kneecap kind of starts to wobble a little bit because it's playing a little tug of war with your IT band, which is on the side of your leg here. And it was recommended to me by my physical therapist to wear what's called an unloading brace. It's virtually the same brace that offensive linemen in college football wear. I wear it, and you don't really feel it. It slowed me down in terms of my time, but I'm not winning any races anyway, so it's more for precautionary than anything else.
I've noticed that your daughter runs a lot with you. Is that something that she gravitated to because of you, or how did that happen?
My older daughter would do the turkey trot with me, but she couldn't run the whole thing. And she asked me to train her a bunch of years ago so she could at least run the full 5K, and she did. And the same way, she got hooked on it. And then she's done a bunch of almost 20 half marathons at this point. She hasn't done a full yet. And we were running together, but of course, the student became the master, and she became faster than me, but of course, who isn't? And so now when we do races together, she pretty much takes off on her own. Typically when you run, you either run with your friends because you've decided you want to do that, but you don't want to hold anybody back, so it's nothing personal, so it's just what your particular priority is. Do you want to run with your friends, or do you want to run to see what your best time could be?
And lastly, Jay, any advice that you could give to somebody who wants to start running and finally graduate from 5Ks to the half to the full marathons like yourself?
Well, honestly, I think any physical activity you take up, it should be something you enjoy. And I think people dread running because they take on too much in the very beginning. So my biggest suggestion for people that I've trained or inspired to run is do intervals, and that's where you walk and then you run. So in the beginning, maybe just start with a half a mile and run for 30 seconds and walk for 2 minutes or something like that, and then start to adjust the time and the intervals as you go on, because if you feel like you've conquered it, then you look forward to the next time. So for example, if that's how you started out, then say, oh, that was easy. I think next time I go out, I'm going to run for a minute and walk for 2 minutes. Make it enjoyable for yourself. Also, as silly as this sounds, buying new running shoes or a new running shirt or shorts or a new running belt, you look forward to wearing that stuff. So it's kind of cool.
Well, Jay, you convinced me. I'm going to go grab myself a new pair of running shoes and go for a run and get after it. Yeah, thanks for coming on and taking the time out your day. And we will see you next time on Back on Track.